just in terms of apologies, we did receive apologies from member Masipa, who is attending the Grain SA Farmer Development Day at Nampu, but the alternate for him is member Leon van Wyk. We also received an apology from member Dirk Wessels, who is attending the NCOP visit week. His alternate is member Thomas Walters. I have seen him online as well. Just for record purposes and for just to familiarize themselves with the committee, I would just like to do a brief round of introductions from the members of the committee. I'm Peter Johnson. I'm the chairperson of the budget committee. If we can then just start with any of the other members, just to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Noma Mbombo. I'm the member of the committee.
Hi there, I'm member Leon van Wyk, who's an alternate member of the committee who's serving as a committee member today. Hi there, everyone.
Hi, I'm Thomas Walters. I'm also serving, as you indicated, as an alternate for member Wessels. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. This is Grant Murray. I'm an alternate member on this committee. However, I'm not filling in for any particular member that's absent. I'm just attending in the interest of knowing what's going on. Thank you so much.
Member
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm Beauty Stoffels. I'm a member of this committee.
Thank you, members. I think we have covered the members. I would now like to hand over to the FFC. I have received word that the chairperson, Dr. Patience, would not attend today's meeting. I'm not sure if I see a hand. Amanda Kleinboy, please go ahead.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone present. I am Mrs. Amanda Kleinboy. I am representing SALGA as a PEC member and NCOP representative.
Welcome, Ms. Kleinboy. I just want to check from the FFC if either the chairperson or the acting CEO, Ms. Daura, is online, or who presentations from the FFC side.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, honourable members. My name is Thando Ngozo. I'm one of the research managers at the FFC. I'll be leading the team today in terms of the presentation that we're going to make to you. So like you've said, the chairperson is unable to join us today because of prior engagements. Yes, I'm the one who will be leading the team. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ngozu. If we can please just ask, you have introduced yourself, but if the rest of your team can just briefly introduce themselves, we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I will call upon them to do so. So first of all, we have Sasha Peters, who's also a manager here at the FFC. She will introduce herself.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee and other colleagues. As indicated, my name is Sasha Peters and I'm part of the research unit at the Financial and Fiscal Commission. Thank you.
Next, we have Fabrice Kwatabuyege. He will also introduce himself.
Morning, Chair and honourable members. This is Fabrice Kwatabuyege. I'm a researcher at the FFC and I'll be part of the presentation today. Thank you.
And then lastly, we have Neo Malungane, who's going to introduce himself as well.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Neo Malungane, and I'm also part of the research at the FFC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ngozu, and welcome to you and your team. Welcome to member Litakong, who's also joined us in this meeting. I would just like to ask the FFC, before you start with your presentation, we only have an hour and a half scheduled for this meeting. If we can perhaps start with the presentation on the DORA, and if we then do have time, we can do the relationship between the FFC and the Budget Committee last. So if you don't mind, if we can just start with the presentation on the DORA first, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Ngozu.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. We'll do as you've requested. So the annual submission consists of 6 chapters. I will take you through the first chapter, and then Fabrice will take you through the second chapter. Sasha will do the third chapter, Neo the fourth and the fifth chapter, and Fabrice will come again and do the sixth chapter. I don't know if you have the presentation on your side, or would you like us to share it from our side?
We have the presentation, but if you could share it on your screen, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you so much. Please confirm if you're able to see the presentation.
We can see the presentation, thanks.
All right. So thank you so much, Chairperson, for the opportunity to present. I will start off with contextual chapters of the presentation, and the reason we include those chapters is because they're significant in terms of the allocating or distributing resources across the 3 spheres of government. So the slide that you see now is on the population, and it consists of data from the census that is conducted by Stats SA, and comparing the population changes between the 2011 census and the 2022. What we want to say, Chairperson, is that there's growth in as far as Western Cape is concerned, that we see that there is a 20.7 increase, while the national population grows by 19.8%. So what we want to say is that this growth places additional pressure on the province infrastructure, services and economic resources. So given the size of the population and its rapid increase, what we want to say is that the Western Cape's share of the national revenue must reflect these dynamics to ensure equitable service delivery and economic development. These population changes are key inputs in determining the division of revenue, as provinces with higher population growth will require more resources for infrastructure and service delivery. Moving on to the next slide. This slide it's a visual representation comparing South Africa's population structure between 1996 and 2022 census. What is important to note is that the changing population structure in the Western Cape as part of South Africa's overall demographic shift highlights the need for tailored fiscal policies. The age distribution in the province is crucial for planning education, healthcare, and social services. As a province with growing youth and working age population, the Western Cape will need an equitable share of the national budget to address these specific demographic challenges. Moving on to this slide, which is basically on migration. It lists the top 20 countries sending migrants to South Africa according to the 2011 and 2022 census data. What is worth noting is that migration into the Western Cape from both international and domestic sources have been a significant factor in its population growth. As one of the key provinces receiving migrants, the province faces a heightened demand for housing, employment opportunities, and social services. The migration patterns affect the provincial service delivery, especially in urban areas, and migration flows are important factor in revenue allocation as they add to the population and employment demands in specific regions. Moving on, then, this slide is on the socio-economic profiles of provinces, and what we want to say is that the Western Cape saw a year-on-year employment increase from 2.66 million people that is people that were employed in 2023 to 2.74 million in 2024, with a corresponding slight increase in unemployment. These labor market shifts reflect the province's economic resilience, but also its challenges in providing jobs to a growing population. As employment is a key indicator in determining revenue allocations, these trends must be taken into account to ensure targeted fiscal support for job creation initiatives. So these slides then depicts the three branches of government as we know them: the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, with their respective roles in lawmaking, implementation, and interpretation. What's important about this slide is that the FFC plays a crucial role in advising the legislature on financial and fiscal matters, particularly regarding the equitable division of revenue. This ensures that the legislature can hold the executive accountable for its fiscal actions, including how public funds are allocated, spent, and whether they align with national priorities and legal framework. So what's important is that the separation of powers ensures checks and balances in the South Africa's governance system, and this slide then locates the FFC's advisory role, which empowers the legislature to oversee the executive's fiscal management, enhancing accountability and promoting transparency in the use of public resources. And moving on to this slide, it's on the system of cooperative governance. It explains South Africa's cooperative governance system with national, provincial, and local governments, emphasizing the mutual respect for authority and intergovernmental coordination. What's important here is to note that effective governance requires interdependence and collaboration between all spheres of government. Moving on to these slides, which now begins to speak specifically to the FFC's mandate. The slide captures the FFC's constitutional role as described in the slides, with emphasis on its mandate to provide recommendations on revenue sharing, provincial loans, and other fiscal matters. So what's important is to note that the FFC plays a critical role in ensuring the equitable distribution of resources and fiscal accountability across government spheres. Moving on to the next slide. This slide is just, it lists the key constitutional criteria the FFC considers when making fiscal recommendations, including national interest, fiscal capacity, and service delivery needs. What's important to note from this slide is that the fiscal recommendation that the Commission makes must balance national obligations with the need to provide essential services at provincial and local levels. We move on then to the history of the Commission. What's important is just to note that the Commission was established in 1994, and its first submission was made in 1995. It became a constitutional institution in 1996 under Chapter 13 of the Constitution, and in 1997 the FFC's mandate was formalized through the Financial and Fiscal Commission Act, empowering it to provide fiscal recommendations to Parliament and other state authorities. What's important to note from this slide is that the FFC is a long-standing institution institution, ensuring fiscal discipline and equitable revenue sharing across South Africa's government structure. This slide is about the regulatory framework. What we've done here, we've just listed the legislative framework that establishes the FFC, but also that the FFC must consider in conducting its affairs. So, Chairperson, that was just the preface to the presentation. My apologies. Let me just quickly move on because this was the induction presentation. Sorry about that. Let me just quickly move then to the annual submission, but it has the same contextual slides. So we've gone through these slides in the previous presentation, and I won't repeat them. I'll go straight to the first chapter of the presentation. So the first chapter is about the improving public sector performance, and the chapter was looking at an international perspective. So what's important in terms of the background and introduction is that the slide introduces the importance of assessing public sector performance to ensure economic growth. It emphasizes learning from international experiences to inform domestic reforms. Secondly, benchmarking against international standards can highlight areas where South Africa's public sector can improve. What's also worth noting is that implementing best practices from other countries could enhance efficiency and service delivery, contributing to the overall economic stability in South Africa. So the main point that we're making through this slide is that assessing and improving public sector performance based on international best practices is crucial for fostering economic growth and development. So in terms of the findings, then we conducted, in terms of our methodology, we used three techniques. The first being the stochastic frontier analysis, and then we also calculated the technical efficiency scores, and lastly, we did the top-bit regression analysis. And I will go through the findings as it relates to each of those techniques and move on to the qualitative part of the analysis. So with regards to the stochastic frontier analysis, it was conducted across 23 upper, middle, and high-income countries, and it shows that investment in education and public health are critical to improving public sector efficiency and economic growth. And specifically, when it comes to the numbers, a 1% increase in public health spending reduced inefficiency by 3.6%, and education contributed 27% of public sector output. The correlation between government spending in education and health with increased efficiency underscores the need for prioritizing these sectors in South Africa. What is also worth noting is that strategic investment could lead to substantial gains in public sector productivity and, by extension, economic growth. What's important to note from this slide is that investment in education and public health are key drivers of public sector efficiency and economic growth. Moving on then to the technical efficiency scores, the technical efficiency scores revealed that out of 16 high-income countries, only 4 countries had efficiency scores that were below the 74% average. So we also note that South Africa is performing below average due to factors like a bloated public wage bill, corruption, and inefficiencies in service delivery. South Africa's low technical efficiency indicates a significant room for improvement in public sector management. So what becomes important then is that addressing inefficiencies in areas like public wages, corruption, and service delivery can enhance overall productivity and public trust. And the most important point that we want to bring to the attention of the members is that South Africa's low technical efficiency highlights the need for significant reforms in public sector management and service delivery. Moving on then to the topic regression, what it shows us is that increased spending on education and infrastructure correlates with improved public sector efficiency in upper, middle, and high-income countries. It found that a 1% increase in government investment in education boosts public sector efficiency by 0.19%. Similarly, a 1% increase in infrastructure spending leads to a 4% improvement in efficiency. And these findings reinforce the importance of targeted fiscal policies, and that for South Africa, it means that increasing investment in infrastructure and education could yield higher public sector efficiency, thus fostering economic growth and development. The key point to take home is that strategic investment in education and infrastructure are crucial for improving public sector efficiency. Moving on to the next slide, which is now on the qualitative findings. We conducted 4 international case studies, one on Rwanda, the other one China, Brazil, and India. And what the case studies are telling us is that political leadership, institutional capacity, incentives, and transparency are critical factors in successful public sector reforms. These reforms are crucial for South Africa's public sector reform. Secondly, emphasizing strong political leadership, improving institutional capacity, and ensuring transparency will be vital for successful implementation of reforms and achieving the desired outcome. And then in terms of the recommendations, then we have a number of recommendations that we are making that are directed to the National Treasury to action. We recommend an infrastructure incentive grant. We also recommend investment in infrastructure in sectors like transport, energy, and communication to enhance national infrastructure. Also, technological innovation, long-term planning, multi-year investment plans, and monitoring and evaluation. But we also make some recommendations that are directed to the Department of Service and Administration. Firstly, that they should establish service centers to streamline access to public services, reduce bureaucracy, and improve overall customer experience. Again, continuing with the recommendations to the Department of Public Service and Administration, they should implement a performance-based reward system, a centralized public service examination that will screen applicants for the civil service, testing their knowledge in areas such as South African history, the Constitution, administration law, public administration, and basic economics. We are also recommending public awareness campaigns and also effective feedback mechanisms. And again, there are a number of recommendations that we're making that are still targeted or that has to do with the Department of Public Service and Administration, that they should expand online public services, develop mobile applications, implement digital document management, and create integrated service delivery platforms. Chairperson, let me pause here and with your permission, invite Fabrice to come in and continue with the second chapter of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Tando. Again, good morning, Chair and honorable members. So I'll take you through Chapter 2 of the annual submission, which had a focus on productivity of rail transport sector in South Africa. So just by way of background, I think, Chair and honorable members, we can all agree that South Africa's rail transport sector is a crucial enabler of economic activity in the country, as it is responsible for the movement of the country's commodities, particularly coal and iron ore, as well as agricultural goods, in addition to being a cost-effective mode of transportation for the country's population. Its economic importance is reflected in the fact that the transport sector, including rail, accounts for an estimated 6.5% of the country's GDP. That being said, the rail transport sector has been faced with well-documented challenges over at least the best part of the last decade or so. And those challenges include chronic underinvestment in infrastructure, limited capacity, the theft and vandalism of infrastructure, as well as corruption allegation. So what this has all translated to is that rail transport in the country's transport mix overall has seen a steep decline over the best part of the last decade and more, with rail transport accounting for less than 20% of general freight and 10% of passenger movement. With this has all translated into costing the economy an estimated 385 billion, according to research that was done by the University of Stellenbosch. So the overall aim of the FSC research into the country's rail transport sector was firstly to look at unpacking and understanding the factors that have contributed to the decline in productivity and how that links to the intergovernmental fiscal relations system. And secondly, to look at ways or interventions that can be used to unlock the sector's potential and position it back as a key driver of economic growth. If we look at the next slide, it just provides an overall picture of the state of finances of PRASA, which is responsible for passenger rail movements in the country. So as you'll see, between the 2008, 2009 and 2022-23 financial years, the entity's fair revenue has all but collapsed, falling by over 70% from 1.3 billion in 2008 to 2009 to 380 billion in 22-23 financial year. On the other hand, the entity's operating expenses have continued to balloon, increasing from 5.1 billion to close to 12 billion over the same time period. Now, this has an adverse effect on the intergovernmental fiscal relations system, as it creates that continued dependence on national government transfers to the SOE. This in turn places strain on the national budget and influences the resource allocations across the different spheres of government. So to help support the entity, the Department of Transport provides it with two subsidies, namely an operational subsidy and a capital subsidy. So the operational subsidy is intended to help fund PRASA's day-to-day operations, while the capital subsidy is intended to go towards the refurbishment and modernization of the company's assets. What you'll see on this slide is that the entity's operating subsidies has more than doubled, raising from 3 billion in 2008 to 2009 to an allocation of 7.2 billion in the 21-22 financial year. This represents compounded annual growth of around 6.4%. On the other side, the company's capital subsidies has risen from 2.4 billion to close to 13 billion over the same period. Now, this can be attributed to PRASA's capital program, which is focused on renewing outdated infrastructure and assets. However, we do note that over the past decade, PRASA has actually struggled to spend its capital budget, except for the 2022-23 financial year, where it overspent. Now, the reasons behind the struggles to spend this budget have been attributed to the loss of capacity, so mostly relating to a loss of project management capacity and engineering capacity. What we do also want to highlight to yourself, Chair, and honourable members, is that PRASA has repeatedly flagged in its own annual reports that the that the operator is materially reliant on the operational subsidy from the Department of Transport. So what that indicates is that without that operational subsidy, the entity could fail to be a going concern. The next slide provides a picture of the state of finances of Transnet. Now, overall, Transnet has debt to the tune of 130 billion, which has risen from 123 billion in the 2017-18 financial year. And it's been widely reported that the entity is spending close to R1 billion a month to help service its debt. And the fact that the entity is so highly leveraged and requires continued support was evidence in the fact that Treasury gave it a guarantee at the end of the 2003 calendar year. Now, what you'll see on this slide specifically is just a focus on Transnet Freight Rail, which is the entity's largest revenue earner. And what it shows is that Transnet Freight Rail lost close to 40 billion in potential revenue in the 22-23 financial year. And this was largely as a result of the unavailability of locomotives. This was linked to the fact that some of the locomotives were not able to function as a result of them awaiting spare parts for them to be serviced. The figure also shows that Transnet recorded revenue losses of close to 2 billion in 22-23 financial year as a result of security-related challenges. So those, again, related to the theft of and vandalism of infrastructure. Now, this was up from a loss of 141 million recorded in 2017-18. Overall, as a result of the operational challenges that the entity continues to face, its earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization margin has been on the declining trend since 2018-2019, falling from close to 45% in 2018-2019 to 19.3% in the 22-23 financial year. And this is in part due to lower revenues. So since Transnet Freight Rail is Transnet's largest division, improving its financial performance is key to the entity being able to meet its financial obligation and to mitigate against the instances of having to turn to the state for funding. On the next slide, just highlights our analysis that we did using a quantitative technique called data envelopment analysis. Now, this technique was used to produce technical efficiency scores for both PRASA and Transnet. Now, what we mean by technical efficiency is basically how our entity will utilize its inputs to produce outputs. So on this slide, what the inputs are, we looked at the ability of Transnet to convert its expenditure and subsidies that it gets into to help generate passenger trips. So what you'll see is that process technical efficiency has fallen from a score of 1, which is the maximum score that you can attain under this method, in 2014-15 to a score of 0.04 in the 21-22 financial year. So the score of 0.04 basically indicates that PRASA was only utilizing about 4% of its potential maximum efficiency. And since then, it's experienced, since the 2014-15 financial year, experienced a marked downturn in its ability to convert the inputs into passenger trips. The next slide looks at Transnet technical efficiency score. And this, what it shows is that Transnet's technical efficiency has been on a declining trend, most notably from the 2019 to 20 financial year, where it fell from a score of 0.96 to 0.07. So this implies that Transnet's conversion of its inputs, the inputs here being its operational expenditure, the number of employees it has, and its capitalized maintenance, to convert that into freight volumes, has moved from a rate of 96% efficiency to 77% efficiency over the 4-year period. Now, this drop in efficiency has coincided with the drop in general freight business volumes, which refers to just the commodities that Transnet is able to move. So things like agricultural products, minerals, steel, automotive parts, etc. Now, this fall could be due to several factors. So one possible reason being in the way in which Transnet is utilizing its operational expenditure to translate into those outputs. And another reasons could be that there may be inefficiencies in the utilization of its capitalized maintenance budget, which means that the maintenance activities that are actually meant to increase the value of efficiency of the company's assets have not been having desired positive impact on the company's operational performance. As part of our research, we also undertook country case studies. Now, the countries that we focused on as part of this analysis was China, France, the US, and Japan. And we also conducted an assessment of South Africa's own Gauteng Rapid Rail Link. Now, the purpose of this case study analysis was to gain insights into approaches that could be used to help reform South Africa's rail transport sector, to help attract the necessary investment and technical expertise it needs to improve its operational and financial performance. The lessons learned from these case studies included that separating a SOE into distinct entities can help enhance competition, attract capital, and overall improve the performance and efficiency of the rail transport sector. A joint venture model, which refers to two or more entities coming together, could also offer an alternative to public-private partnerships for helping to draw external investment into the sector. Thirdly, it's important to have a clear and strong legislative framework for public-private partnerships to help bring in that private sector financing for infrastructure projects related to rail. And finally, the collaborations between local governments and the private sector can also be effective in delivering commuter rail services. In terms of the recommendations emanating from our research, the first recommendation that we make was regarding the national devolution strategy. So the Commission welcomes the priority attached to that, and we would strongly advise that against any further delays in meeting its completion deadline. The Commission further recommends that a phased approach be applied to the devolution process, so to enable to adopt a test and learn approach where lessons can be learned before rolling it on a wider scale. The second recommendation relates to the Department of Transportation working alongside National Treasury, Transnet, the South African Police Service, PRASA, and the private sector to utilize data-driven strategies that can help improve infrastructure maintenance, modernize train tracking and scheduling systems, and also help combating criminal activities. And the last recommendation was that the Department of Transport should work quickly to implement the private sector participation framework. So that framework is important to guide the coordination and collaboration with state-owned entities and the private sector, again, to help bring in much needed investment and technical expertise into the rail sector. With that said, I'll hand over to my colleague to go through the next chapter of our submission. Thank you, Chair and honourable members.
Thank you, Fabrice, and good morning again, Chair and members of the committee. Chapter 3 focuses on agriculture. And if we move to the next slide, please. Just by way of introduction, we note that the performance of the agricultural sector can have multiple impacts on society. It can contribute to economic growth, employment, rural development, and food security. However, the challenge that we have in South Africa is that the structure of our agricultural sector is not significantly transformed in the past 30 years. So we sit with a sector that is still quite dualistic in nature. In this particular chapter, we focused on two aspects. The first was to understand what assistance the Department of Agriculture is providing to smallholder farmers in South Africa. And we focused on the conditional grant allocations to smallholder farmers. And secondly, we focused on approaches that can improve and expand the performance and productive capacity of smallholder farmers. And here we honed in on precision farming. Moving to the next slide, please. So I will take members through three of our key findings. And the first finding relates to the low level of budget prioritization attached to agriculture in South Africa. An assessment of the resources allocated to agriculture across the 9 provinces shows that for 2024-25, provinces are set to allocate 14.3 billion to this sector. And this is of a total resource envelope of 739 billion. And this equates to an average of just under 2% of the total provincial resource envelope being allocated to agriculture. Then when we analyzed the 3 conditional grants in the sector, we found that the average allocation per beneficiary really highlights the funding constraints faced by provincial agriculture departments and brings into question whether the support provided to farmers is enough to help build their long-term sustainability. And in essence, what we see happening is a thin distribution of resources being shared across an ever-growing number of beneficiaries. And we also noted that there are various other government funding opportunities aimed at farmers, smallholder farmers, but there's a lot of disjointedness between the funding streams available. There are lots of bits of funding, whereas it may be more beneficial to consolidate these various funding streams into a single comprehensive type of support. Moving to the next slide, please. Another of the key challenges facing farmers, and especially smallholder farmers trying to grow their businesses, is the issue of market access. And while government has put in place various interventions to assist farmers and smallholder farmers with gaining access to markets, this aspect remains a significant barrier for smallholder farmers. And what we are suggesting be added to the mix of interventions is for government to consider a more targeted approach through opening up government markets to smallholder farmers. And this is also referred to as public food procurement. And public food procurement involves fulfilling the agriculture-related needs of government, whether from schools for school feeding programs or whether for hospitals, prisons, and other facilities, fulfilling these needs using smallholder farmers. Now, one of the common challenges in obtaining access to markets, especially in the case of smallholder farmers, is being able to provide produce at scale or on a consistent basis. And so we also need to think about, if we go the route of public food procurement, how do we deal with some of these challenges? And so there are solutions which could include, for example, creating farmer supply partnerships that could help circumvent the issue of inadequate scale. We also think that there is room to provide to prioritize provincial agricultural departments in order to assist farmers to become part of the formal supply chain process. And this could be through constructing pack houses and helping these farmers to acquire refrigerated trucks for transportation. And in our engagements with stakeholders, we noted that a few provinces have begun this sort of approach. But what we are advising is that this sort of approach becomes the norm, as opposed to a few exceptions across the 9 provinces. If we can move to the next slide, please. Regarding how to improve the productivity and output of smallholder farmers, we looked at the implementation of precision farming. And precision farming is essentially an approach to farming that relies heavily on data and technology to inform decisions. And the technology used to inform decisions can include software and hardware-based weather monitoring, which can help to prevent losses due to climate disasters. It can include soil monitoring, which helps to keep the soil healthy, resulting in healthy crops being produced. It can include pest surveillance, yield monitoring, and disease monitoring, all of which can decrease the loss of crops, can assist in decreasing the loss of crops. But the type of technology can be ultra sophisticated, or it can be basic, such as cell phone technology. The point is just that using data and information to inform decision making can assist in making more informed decisions, which can in turn lead to more efficient use of agricultural inputs. Now, the precision farming approach is widely used. It's the norm in commercial farming. And when we looked at initiatives on the go in the public sector and being driven by both national and provincial agricultural departments, while the stakeholders we interacted with appreciated the benefits of the approach, limited resources has been a hindrance in terms of prioritizing this type of approach. So we see that some provinces that have resources have developed cell phone apps whereby data and information is shared with farmers. So there are green shoots that exist across the 9 provinces, where this this leveraging the use of technology is being looked into. But as part of our study, we wanted to ascertain exactly how precision farming has helped smallholder farmers. And we studied the data of an agri company called GWK that has a few projects aimed at assisting smallholder farmers with the implementation of precision farming. And if we look at the 2 figures on the right of that slide, it shows maize and wheat production prior to and post the implementation of precision farming. And one can see that the yields are more than double following the implementation of this approach. Then moving to the last slide on this section, based on the analysis in this chapter, we make 3 recommendations. The first recommendation concerns the funding. And here we recommend that instead of the various small pools of funding, that we rather consolidate the conditional grants and other funding instruments aimed at smallholder farmers. And in this way, we can hopefully assist in a more meaningful way that can contribute to the long-term sustainability of smallholder farmers. The second recommendation concerns market access, that can also serve to strengthen food security. And here we recommend that government actively support public food procurement from smallholder farmers, and that provinces assist smallholder farmers with the costs associated with integrating into the supply chain. The third recommendation advises government to consider entering into a public-private partnership to drive implementation of precision farming with smallholder farmers. Some of the technology can be costly, but if government works with the private sector, this is something that can be done. Thank you, Chair. I'll now hand over to my colleague, Noor, to take you through the next chapter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honourable members. I'll take you through the next 2 chapters of our submission. So the first chapter, we focus on the South African judicial system. So in this chapter, we attempt to highlight the challenges. We attempt to highlight the challenges and evaluating the efficiency of the courts within the system. So by way of introduction, it is imperative to note that the judicial system impacts the country's growth and societal values. So with respect to the impact on growth, it is imperative to also note that the existence of an efficient and stable judicial system promotes predictability and promotes predictability and a less risky business environment which is attractive to investors and other businesses. So looking specifically in South Africa, where civil and social rights are justiciable, a healthy functioning of a judicial system can help facilitate social and economic development. So, however, the challenge in South Africa is that despite significant investment, the judicial system has not achieved the desired outcome. So, one of the key aspects of the vision of the judicial system is to provide justice for all. However, if you look at the extent of case backlogs, we can see that there are challenges undermining the performance of our court system. So, for the purpose of this analysis, we are attempted to assess the challenges and efficiency of the judicial system. And in doing so, we utilize the dominantly quantitative methodology, whereby spending trends were analyzed, and in evaluating efficiency, we also utilize the data envelopment analysis. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we attempt to contextualize the South African judicial system. So what is important for members to note here is that the judicial system is a national competency. So unlike health or basic education, where responsibilities are shared across the spheres, responsibility for the judicial system, which includes the court, judges, etc., all sit with the national government. So looking into the structure on the diagram that is portrayed on the slides. So the structure of the judicial system is broad. However, we'll first focus on the composition that is relevant to our analysis, and then we'll also move to explain the other legs. So from the High Court, including the Supreme Court of Appeal, to the Constitutional Court, these are known as to be the superior courts, whereas the magistrate courts, as we can see on the diagrams, these are known to be ordinary or lower courts, and generally courts of first instance. So if we move to the right-hand side of the diagram, we see that on the right leg of the structure, these are known to be specialized courts, and these specialized courts include electoral courts and the labor court, also including also the Labor Court of Appeal. And these courts have, what we should note is that these courts have the same status as the High Court. So in terms of oversight within the judicial system, there are two key role players, and that is the Office of the Chief Justice and the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. So essentially, the Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary and the head of the Constitutional Court, whereas the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development provides financial and administrative support to the court system. And next slide, please. So on this slide, we dive into some of the findings that emanate from this study. So the first finding relates to human capacity, whereby the figure on the left of the slide shows staff in superior court, and this includes both administrative and court clerks, while on the right, the figure on the right considers only judges in the same court category. So as we looking into these two diagrams, what we see is that the Gauteng and Western Cape divisions of the High Court have the highest number of staff and judges. So looking into the overall general trend, we see that staff increases between 2016 and 2022. We see staff increases between 2016 and 2022. However, these increases do not occur alongside increases in the number of judges in the same period. And in substantiating that, various reports, including annual reports of the departments in the sector, indicate that there is a shortage of both judges and magistrates in the judiciary. This further puts the work of the judiciary at risk, also noting that the sector is labor intensive, with judges and magistrates being a critical input. Further on emphasizing the pressures that the courts are under, the Deputy Judge President of the Gauteng High Court Division recently issued a notice indicating that the waiting time for a civil case to be heard can take up to 3.5 years. However, this is not in line with the norms and standards of the performance of judicial functions, which indicate a lead time of 12 months waiting period for a civil case. So basically here, what is important to note is that we are more than double the waiting time for a civil case to be heard. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we look at human capacity. However, we attempt to look at this at the lower court category, comprising also of the total staff, which includes both administrative and court clerks relative to magistrate. So looking at the general trend on this diagram, we see that between 2016 and 2022, the number of staff has declined across all provinces, while the number of magistrates is showing marginal growth between the two periods. It still remains low, especially considering that these are courts of first entry, and which hear over 90% of all cases. Next slide, please. So with respect to resolved cases and backlog cases and lessons from country reforms, what is important for members to note here is that backlogs are prevalent across all courts. However, they are severe at the level of magistrate courts. So looking at this slide, we present the data on resolved cases by province for two periods, namely 2016-17 and 2022-23. So here, the general trend, we see that the number of cases in backlog are about half the number of resolved cases across all provinces. So, for example, if we look at the Western Cape, which is the first from the top, the first two bars show the number of backlog cases versus resolved cases for 2022-2023, and the third and fourth bars speak to 2016-17. So what we see here is that in the Western Cape, as at 2022-23, the number of cases in backlog is about 31,344, while the number of cases resolved in 2022-23 is 57,502. It's 57,500. However, this is not shocking, noting that magistrate courts are characterized by long processing times, delays in finalizing cases, and thus the increase in backlogs. So as part of the analysis that we undertook, we also looked at interventions that were employed in few countries such as Portugal, Norway, and also Kenya to try and improve analysis that were undertaken to try and improve the functioning of the judicial system. And what came out consistently was the use of high-speed compatible information and communication technologies, which contribute to reducing the duration of court proceedings, resulting in improving administrative efficiencies. Next slide, please. So this slide, we look at the efficiency analysis. So as indicated in the beginning, that we're also interested in understanding how efficient our courts are. So this slide presents the result of these efficiency analysis. So looking at the figure at the top of the slide and the last two bars in the figure, it shows the 2016 and 2022 efficiency scores. And on aggregate, we found that the efficiency of the courts in South Africa declined in 2022 relative to 2016. The same figures that we see there also provided disaggregation of the efficiency results by court category. So we see that the efficiency of magistrate courts are the lowest of all court types for 2016 and 2023. Secondly, we see that there was a significant decline in efficiency of the Constitutional Court in 2023 relative to 2016. Moreover, the efficiency of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the various specialized courts and magistrate courts all remain the same in both periods. It was only high courts that showed an increase in the level of efficiency between 2016 and 2023. So diving deep into magistrate courts a bit more, we look at the table at the bottom. It shows, so on that table, we see that efficiency scores of various provincial divisions, including, so for example, if we look at the Western Cape, we see that the Western Cape division had the highest efficiency score with 63% in 2016 and 57% in 2023. However, this can also represent a decline when comparing the two periods. So, while again on the table we see that the Eastern Cape was the least efficient in 2016, while Mpumalanga was the least efficient in 2023. So our main point here is that noting that magistrates are courts of first entry. So the poor performance of these courts can have a knock-on effect on the efficiency of the entire system. Therefore, we need to put in place interventions that will help mitigate these challenges within the court system. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we look at the recommendations that the commission made. So the commission from this chapter made 2 recommendations. So the first recommendation is that an audit to identify the extent of shortages in the number of judges be undertaken. So this will help aid our understanding of the size and shape of the problem we are facing. While we have indicated the issue of shortages of judges and magistrates, it is important to ensure that alongside this audit, we also have an appropriate performance management system in place to identify and root out internal performance issues. So the second recommendation relates to the leveraging on technology to improve performance. And this, at the minimum, should include standardizing the use of electronic systems for registering cases, tracking cases, and record keeping. Thank you very much. Next chapter, please. So on this section of on this chapter, we focus on the inefficiencies in the South African public health system, with a focus on district hospitals and the issue of medical legal claims. So on this slide, it is imperative to note that accessible and quality healthcare services is a cornerstone of South Africa's post-apartheid democratic society, and the provision of healthcare currently is prone to inefficiencies due to structural inequalities. Therefore, improving efficiencies in the health system and how it functions is important, especially when the provision of healthcare exerts positive externalities. So in terms of this chapter, there are 2 themes that that were explored, and that is the allocation of resources and productivity outcomes within the district hospital system and the determinant of efficiencies. Secondly, the chapter analyzes the size and extent of medical legal claims and provincial health response strategies, noting that one of the outcomes of inefficiencies in the health system is the exponential increase in medical negligence claims. Next slide, please. So in this slide, the main focus is on the table. So the table on the slide summarizes key health indicators for South Africa, upper middle income countries, and high income countries. So looking at this table, we see that in 2019, public health spending in upper middle income countries and African countries was on average 3.9% and 1.7% respectively. In South Africa, this figure was considerably higher at 4.8%, yet life expectancy is relatively low in South Africa, especially compared to upper middle income countries. So despite continued government investment in public health care, the quality of public health care service provision remains suboptimal. Next slide, please. So with respect to component of productivity in district hospitals across provinces in 2011 and 2019, here the general trend is that in some provinces, like in the KZN, the proportion of doctors and nurses has increased relative to the target population, while in other provinces like Mpumalanga, it decreased between 2011 and 2019. So also considering the Western Cape, we see an increase in hospital beds and the ratio of doctors between 2011 and 2019, while the ratio of nurses could be said to have remained slightly the same in the same period. So here, what is important to note is that the overall is that the productive capacity of district hospitals in South Africa is severely constrained, especially when considering critical human and capital resources such as doctors, nurses, and hospital beds. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we go through some of the efficiency results from our analysis. From the efficiency analysis, we found that the majority of district hospitals are operating inefficiently and have gradually become more inefficient. And this also speaks to the need for policy intervention in the district hospital sector. So despite some of the improvements in efficiency across certain district hospitals, the result indicate that productivity within the district hospital sector declined by approximately 8% on average between 2011 and 2019. So the deteriorating productivity in the sector is uprising given the district hospital's capacity in terms of key resources such as doctors, nurses, hospital beds is under severe constraint. However, on a lighter note, when we did our analysis, the analysis revealed several important factors that are positively correlated to efficiency, and this would include reducing waiting times at hospitals, increasing the ratio of nurses to the uninsured population, optimal allocation of resources such as core essential medicines, and finally increasing preventative healthcare measures and preventions. Next slide, please. So in this slide, these are findings with regards to medical legal claims. So what we begin here to do is to try and bring to light what we refer to medical legal claims in our chapter. So with regards to medical legal claims, we refer to claims that occur because of medical negligence or malpractice by health practitioners. So these claims do not just only occur, hence the South African Law Reform Commission identified two critical criteria to establish whether a medical malpractice occurred or not. So firstly, a healthcare provider must have violated the professional standard of care. The second criteria is that an injury must have occurred because of the violation of the professional standard of care. So looking at this graph, we see that. So looking at this graph on the portrayed on the slide, we see that between 2012 and 13 and 2022 and 23, expenditure on medical legal claims increased substantially from 265 million to 1.5 billion, having peaked at almost 2 billion in 2018-19. Furthermore, the Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and KZN accounted for more than 70% of expenditure on medical legal payments over the period. However, the Eastern Cape and Gauteng have paid out more than 2.5 billion over the last 3 years. And also for 2020-21, the Eastern Cape paid out more than 860 million alone. So medical legal claims accounted for about 1% of the total available provincial health budget in 2018-19, with payments accounting for approximately 3.3% of the available Eastern Cape budget in the same year. So to place the growth in medical legal claims in perspective, for the period 2012-13 to 2025-26, the total provincial health budget grew at annual average of 6% compared to the growth in payment trends on medical legal claims, as well as contingent liabilities, which grew at an annual average of 18.5% and 11.5% respectively, further indicating that health budgets remain under significant pressure, with payment for medical negligence outstripping growth in available funding within the health sector. Next slide, please. So in this slide, although the intervention being implemented at the provincial level are starting to show results, progress made is significantly slower than the target set nationally for 70% of reduction in contingent liabilities to 18 billion by 2024. So in this slide, we attempted to provide some of the interventions that have been implemented, and these are disaggregated into primary, secondary, and also tertiary. So in terms of primary interventions, this also include improving clinical standards, infrastructure, training, and technology. Then with respect to secondary interventions, we speak to patient records, speedy management of complaints, and early engagement with harmed individuals, also trying to do a root cause analysis to prevent similar occurrences in the future. So with respect to tertiary interventions, it indicates that professional and comprehensive management of medical legal litigations. It also includes mediation to short-term turnaround time to finalizing cases, and finally creating medical legal trust fund to prevent large lump sum payments. Next slide, please. So on this slide, the Commission intends to make recommendations. So with respect to the inefficiency in the district hospital system, so the Commission makes such recommendations. The Minister of Health needs to exercise allocative efficiency through reprioritization to improve the quality of healthcare within the district hospital system. This also includes the technical efficiency of district hospitals should be monitored at all provincial levels. Secondly, the Minister of Health must ensure accountability mechanism in district hospitals are strengthened. This will also ensure that funds are allocated optimally. Furthermore, guidelines should be provided on how management practices in district hospitals can be improved. Thirdly, the Minister of Health, in collaboration with Minister of Finance and provincial members of executive committees, should improve monitoring and evaluation procedures through the integration of health data. So the integrated data-driven process are needed to enhance transparency, accountability in the health system. So with regards to medical legal claims, the Commission makes these recommendations. The Minister of Health should prioritize the development of integrated national information reporting system. So such a system should include patient and doctor registries with real-time data, and also standardizing reporting fields with enabled creation of uniform database, and also strengthening the government's ability to monitor and evaluate. Secondly, a uniform statistical reporting system should be utilized to enhance the collection and analysis of data-related medical negligence claims. This will also capture the reasons for claims, underlying clinical and treatment failures, and settlement values. Thirdly, provincial departments and health should budget for medical legal litigations and compensate payments in accordance with normal budget practices. Budget forecast should be based on actual expenditure settlement trends. And finally, the Minister of Health should commission an actuarial study into the viability of introducing mandatory professional indemnity cover for all healthcare practitioners, including those in the public sector. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to Fabrice to continue with the last chapter.
Thanks, Now. Chair and honorable members, I'll take you through the final chapter, which looks at local government productive efficiency. So just by way of introduction and background, honorable members, I think we are all aware that the country's local government sphere is plagued by a wide array of challenges that has effectively impeded the sector's ability to fulfill its constitutional mandate relating to the delivery of services such as water, electricity, and sanitation. The Auditor General's reports continue to paint a grim picture of the country's municipalities, with many municipalities being in a state of financial distress and many others being outright dysfunctional. I think all of us on the platform can agree that without a well-functioning local government, the country cannot achieve the necessary growth that it is envisioned. As a result, the Commission sought to conduct a study to estimate municipal efficiency and its determinants, and to propose a suite of measures that we believe can help change the landscape within the local government sphere. The objectives of this research were twofold. So firstly, we sought to investigate and estimate municipal productive efficiency in South Africa. Secondly, we sought to investigate the determinants of local government productivity in the country. The methodology that we employed in the analysis was largely quantitative, where we relied on data development analysis to compute the technical efficiency scores based on the operating expenditure of a sample of 35 municipalities. Now, this was conducted over the period of the 2018, 2019 to 2020 to 2021 financial year. If we look on the slide, the table on this, the next slide, what you'll see is the size of the operating and capital budgets and the outcomes of the sampled municipalities, which we then aggregate in their respective municipal categories for the 2022-23 financial year. We find that municipalities spend over 90% on operating expenditure in the 2022-23 financial year. Now, the largest expenditure share across the categories occurs in the metros, which account for 79% of operating expenditure and 73% of capital expenditure. Operating expenditure consists of the costs that are involved when it comes to the delivery of services. So of the adjusted operating expenditure budgeted of close to 496 billion that was allocated for the 2022-23 financial year, 444 billion, or roughly 90%, was spent by 30 June 2023. The largest municipal operating budgets are employee-related costs at around 28%, bulk purchases 24%, and contracted services 12%. Capital expenditure, now this refers to the long-term investment in socio-economic infrastructure that are necessary to address service delivery backlogs in the country and provide additional economic infrastructure to promote local economic development. So what you'll see when it comes to capital expenditure is that municipalities appear to be prioritizing spending on water, electricity, wastewater, and waste management, as depicted by spending on trading services. So trading services represents 50% of the capital expenditure in 22-23. The next slide shows the results of the efficiency analysis that we conducted. So as I mentioned previously, we took a sample of 35 municipalities, which consisted of 8 metros and 27 local municipalities, and looked at how efficiently these municipalities utilize their operational budgets to provide for services of water, electricity, sanitation, and waste removal for the years 2018 to 2021. Now, the figure on the slide shows the most efficient municipalities as a result of the outcome of our analysis. So from the 35 sampled municipalities, 5 were computed as efficient in 2018 and 2019. So these were the eThekwini municipality, the city of Mbombela, Mkomazi local municipality, the Greater Taung local municipality, and Jo Morolong local municipality. What we see further of these municipalities that were efficient in 2018, only Nkomazi local municipality remained efficient the following year. Furthermore, only the city of Johannesburg and the eThekwini metros were computed as efficient in 2020. The city of Johannesburg, along with the Polokwane local municipality, the city of Tshwane, and the city of Ekurhuleni were also efficient in 2021. So what this means is that these municipalities performed better compared to other municipalities within the same municipal category. The next slide shows the least efficient municipalities that resulted from our efficiency analysis. So this means that these municipalities use more resources to achieve less outcomes. So what we see on the figure on the slide is that these municipalities have an efficiency score of less than 50%. Now, this suggests that most municipalities could have more efficiency spent over. Sorry, let me say that again. The score suggests that most municipalities could have more efficiently spent over 50% of their resources and achieved better spending outcomes. In terms of the recommendations that were coming out of our research, firstly, we recommend that the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs and the South African Local Government Association work closely with these incapacitated municipalities to examine closely their capacity constraints and also look to develop and implement incentive programs to help attract skilled employees to the municipalities. Our second recommendation is that the Minister of COGTA should continuously conduct the skills audits within these municipalities to ensure that they appoint the adequately qualified staff. So to appoint public servants, the Department of COGTA and the National School of Government should develop a national examination to ascertain that senior municipal officers have the required skills to be able to conduct their jobs. And our last recommendation is that the Minister of COGTA, in collaboration with SALGA, should encourage and enforce the implementation of the district development model within the municipalities, and also encourage that the implementation of a staff exchange program among municipalities for roles that have similar dispensation. So in order to facilitate the transfer of skills and best practice techniques of municipal systems and to implement projects at their home municipality within a required time frame. With that being said, Chair and honourable members, this concludes the presentation on the FFC's Division of Revenue. I'll hand back over to you, Chair, to guide us on terms of the next steps going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all the presenters from the FFC for the very informative presentation. Members, we have exactly 8 minutes left. I will now afford members the opportunity to ask if there are any questions, and I already see Member Thomas Walters and Member Grant Murray is in second. Member Walters, let's start with you. Please go ahead. And Member Stoffels third. There we go. Over to you, Member Walters.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll keep it brief given the time constraints. The FFC is, I think, of key importance in making the machinery of government work. And I also think, especially now with GNU in place, I'm very interested to what extent valuable inputs like this is presented as a structured contribution to political decision making. So it's a very simple question yet. How regularly does the FFC interact with the minister and the deputy ministers? To what extent is there structured ongoing relationship there interacting in terms of the ministry where they report to? Thanks.
Thank you, Member Walters. Member Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'll also try and be brief. I want to thank the FFC for the presentation. It's a mouthful. It's a lot to consume in such a short period of time, but it's very valuable information. I wanted to just know, in terms of municipalities, whether the FFC has also certain recommendations that speaks to the effectiveness of SALGA in addressing the capacity of municipalities, which is a big focus and a big reason for failure in terms of municipalities and their capacity to service the communities. Then I also just wanted to know, in terms of, I remember all the recommendations I made note of, but just in terms of the culture of work ethic in South Africa. We're throwing a lot of money at a problem, but if it's not, there's some other issues that are also to be addressed, that government must address in terms of resolving the issues we have. Corruption is one of them, but the issues of work ethic and culture, South Africa's working culture if you're a public servant, do you have the same ambition as those who work in the private sector, and the ability of that particular sector to pay the wages that are due to you? Certainly productivity and pay must speak to each other. But that I will stop there, Chair, due to time, but I want to thank the FFC for this very informative session.
Thank you, Member Marais. The third person was Member Beauty Stoffel. Member Stoffel, anything from your side, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. Am I audible?
We can hear you, yes, Member Stoffel.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, let me thank and appreciate the presentation from FFC. Although, Comrade Chair, I must bring it to the register it to the committee that the time allocated to us is very limited, because I think since it's such a critical committee, it's supposed to have more time in terms of this. And I hope the committee will take note as a chairperson of this committee. And then secondly, Chair, in terms of the presentation, chapter 3, present by the presenter. First of all, I want to applaud the commission in terms of prioritizing the smallholder farmers, because those are the people who's always been neglected when it comes to this presentation. And then also I want to know from them, as much as they have advocated for these smallholder farmers in terms of market, does they have also the authority to advocate for these small farmers for land? For land, that is just a question to them. And then coming to the one of the medical department, South African Public Health, the inefficiency in the district's hospital sector. Now, my question, and I've heard they said, Chair, that there's an increase in hospital and doctors, although there's a kind or slightly a kind of a shortage with the nurses and on all. I'm not sure whether I have captured them correctly. And when we talk about that, if I have captured them correctly, which means there is a problem within the hospitals that might even lead to these medical claims because of the shortage of staff. I'm not sure, Chair, whether I've captured them correct. They must correct me if I'm wrong. And then also my last one, Chair, is that I agree. I wanted to support Member Marais in terms of the effectiveness of SALGA within this process. And then the last question is yeah, that's what I wanted to comment and ask Chairperson.
Thank you, Member Stoffel. Before I hand over to the FFC to answer the questions from the members, I just want to ask Member Thomas Walters. I see your hand. Is that?
It's a new hand, Chair. Can I proceed?
Please go ahead.
Chair, I would like to agree with Member Stoffel. There is a time constraint that we have in terms of really interrogating this. I would like to suggest that we possibly slot in regular feedback from the FFC, where, amongst other things, and we have an interest in this in terms of intergovernmental relations, where my question and her question around SALGA and my question in terms of interaction with the minister and the deputy ministers, where we get regular feedback on that. I think we have an interest to ensure that all the various, call it arms of government, communicate well with one another, especially in our more complex environment. So, Chair, I would like to, perhaps I'm preempting it, but I would like to make a proposal that we have that a regular interaction and regular feedback in those matters going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Walters. I note your concerns as well as Member Beauty Stoffel's concerns with regards to the short allocated time slot for this meeting. I have already checked with the procedural officer. We can call the FFC to this committee on a quarterly basis, so we can and we will do that. This was unfortunately the only slot available on the parliamentary program for this week, this hour-and-a-half slot, but I note and I do agree with you. With that being said, can we please now hand over to the FFC just to answer the questions raised by members. Mr. Ngozo, over to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, let's quickly go through the questions where we can. Honourable Walters, in terms of the political decision making, our mandate enable us or allows us to interact directly with yourselves, that is provincial legislators and also the national legislator in terms of empowering you so that when the departments come to you, you can have the information that you need to make sure that they are accountable. So we don't have any interaction directly with the minister and the deputy minister. And assume you meant the minister for finance and the deputy minister for finance. But the only thing that brings us together is that the legislation that establishes us says that the Minister for Finance must respond to our recommendations in writing. So we present to the recommendations 10 months before the budget is tabled by the minister. So when he tables the budget, he must then respond and say how the FFC recommendations have been taken into consideration when developing the budget, and those that have not been taken into consideration, why they have not been taken into consideration. So that's the only way, that's the only link between us and the executive, but mainly our mandate is directly with the legislature, provincial and national. So that's one. And Honourable Marius, well, we wouldn't necessarily know what type of research SALGA has conducted in terms of assessing the capacity of municipalities, but we have conducted our own research in that regard, and we are happy to share with the committee our findings with regards to what were recommendation in terms of how we assess the capacity of the municipality and what that means in terms of service delivery. It is in one of our annual submission that we've already presented, I think, in the earlier years, and we can share with the committee the recommendations thereof. We agree with Honourable Marius in terms of there must definitely be a link between productivity and pay. So I think this is a big debate that is ongoing in government to find ways of linking the wage bill to the productivity, and absolutely, Honourable Member is spot on linking the two. It's critical. I will invite Sasha to say something on the smallholder farmers access, if he is able access to or availability for land, if she did look into the issue when she was conducting the study, and Neo, maybe Neo can comment on the shortage of human capital, whether it had a bearing on the claims. And yeah, we also agree with Honorable Walters in terms of regular feedback. We are happy to come back at any time and present whatever the committee may like us to present. Let me pause here and invite colleagues to come in and say something on the questions that were raised.
Thank you, Thando, and thank you, Honourable Stoffel, for your comment around the importance of smallholder farmers. Our research can cover any issue that has a financial, fiscal, or intergovernmental fiscal relations impact. In this round, we have not focused on the issue of land, given our research cycle timeframes. We often have to very finely refine the focus of our work. But yes, we are able to cover such an issue. We have a few submissions ago also looked at the issue of agriculture, and in that particular submission, it was there was a focus on smallholder farmers, but the emphasis was on access to basic infrastructure. So we can also make that available to members if that would be helpful. Thank you.
Very much, to Mr. Ngozu and your team. We are located for this meeting already. I would like to thank the FFC for your attendance and for the presentations today. We really appreciate it, and we will definitely be inviting you back to present to this committee throughout the following few months. Mr. Ngozu, to you and your team, you guys are more than welcome to either stay on for the rest of the meeting. We will just be doing resolutions and approving minutes from previous meetings, but you and your team, thank you. You guys are welcome to leave now should you wish to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, for the opportunity to engage with you. I suppose we will leave it at this time and allow the committee to deal with its other affairs. Thank you so much.
Just afford them a second or two to leave the meeting. Mr. Dustin Davids, if you can please just keep an eye on the attendance. I think most of the officials from the FFC have left the meeting. Yes.
Yes, Chairperson. Most of them have left, Chair. Yes, and we still have quorum, Chair.
Thank you so much. Dustin, Mr. Davis, before we get to the resolutions and actions, can we please consider and adopt the draft committee meetings from the committee meeting on the 5th of July 2024? If you can just put them up on the screen for us, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm just flighting it. Can you see it from your side, Chair?
We can see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, through you, can I just take the committee and yourself through the minutes, Chair?
Please do so.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, through you, this is just a draft committee minutes, Chair, of the last meeting that we had, which was on Friday, the 5th of July, Chairperson. All of the members were present, Chair, including there were a lot of alternate members that were also present in this meeting, Chair, including the Provincial Parliament officials, Chairperson. And then, Chairperson, there were just basically some welcome and apologies. And Chairperson, it was basically where you were elected as Chairperson of the committee, Chairperson, and basically just indicating who moved and who seconded the motions, Chairperson. And then you just basically just gave just an expression of your gratuity, Chair, to the members, and then the meeting adjourned at
10:40, Chairperson. That is it for the minutes of the 5th of July, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Can I have a proposer from the committee? I see Member Marais to propose. Thank you. Anyone to second the proposal? Norma French. Thank you, Member Norma French Mbombo. We now move over to the resolutions and the actions. We have already added to the resolutions to invite the FFC back to this committee on a quarterly basis. We have already added that to the resolutions, as well as just a note from my side. When we do schedule these engagements, the following ones, I'll make sure that they are scheduled for a 3-hour slot, and we won't be doing these in an hour-and-a-half slot again. I'll make sure that we do schedule them in 3-hour slots only. I see Member Thomas Walters. Please go ahead, Member.
Yeah, Chair, I think it was invaluable information, and I think that it can really, if some of these proposals are properly debated and included in policy, I think it can create a virtuous cycle in government that is beneficial to all levels of government. So I think it is in our interest as a committee to explore whether that kind of interaction takes place. Now, the answer that I got was good. I don't have any reason to doubt that it wasn't a good answer, but it's actually the quality of interaction that we need to be able to assess and be engaged in. So, for example, it might even be worthwhile to invite some of the minister and the deputy ministers as well to a future meeting as well. But I would certainly like to suggest, as part of our resolution for regular interaction, that we get feedback as to, and from both sides, the ministry as well as the FFC, of what the interaction actually was between the FFC and the ministry there, and between SALGA and between us and them at all levels of government. It does help us to position our approach, and I think we should convey to them that is an expectation of the committee, that we get feedback. We want to know what was conveyed, how regularly it gets conveyed. Is there a virtuous cycle there in terms of information being conveyed and interacted with at all three levels of government? Chair, and I hope that makes sense, but I really think it can be beneficial for us in an environment of participative democracy, intergovernmental relations. It can also help to establish a new kind of relationship that I think we all want. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Walters. Noted and agreed. Members, if you do not agree with any of the resolutions, please do speak up. But we do note and we do assume that members agree with resolutions, as it makes it difficult on an online platform. So please feel free to speak up at any stage if you do not agree with any resolutions. Member Beauty Stoffel, please go ahead, Member.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I can't agree more with Member Walters, but I just wanted to add on it to say, in terms of the committee's mandate, there's also for us a need to go through the reports as a committee and look at our figures versus the spending of that, so that we can even balance the presentation of today with the mandate of the committee. So that, and then also, Chair, I agree in terms with the resolution so far. I just want to put my kind of a disappointment within the committee's response to us. There was a question of mine that was not being answered. And I'm not sure, Chair, whether you were aware of that or what, but the one of the medical aid claims versus the human land. So that one was not being answered. And I think it's a critical question for this committee to take note of. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Stoffel. And I will, just before I afford Member Maree the opportunity, I assume Mr. Davids wants to add to that, but I guess we can, or I would propose that we put it, that we put Member Stoffel's question in writing to the FFC. But we will, I see Dustin confirming that. So I note and I agree with you, Member Stoffel. I also raised my concern about that this presentation was also sent to members at a very late stage. So that's also something that we will take up. I now want to afford Member Grant Maree the opportunity. Please go ahead, Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, in terms of the response we received from the FFC, that we will indeed obtain the findings in terms of the effectiveness of SALGA. They said that they would forward that to us, and I just wanted that to be noted as a follow-up in the recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Maree. I saw Mr. Davids, the procedural officer, noted that as well. Member Stoffel, I'm not sure if that is a legacy hand.
No, that's a legacy hand. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member Stoffel. Actions? I do not see any. Members, thank you so much for attending today's meeting. Have a great afternoon. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.